Generative AI tools. How can content creators use them in a way that is safe, responsible, and ethical? Welcome to Dope Content. This is a show where we talk about content. And I am Laura Bergels, and with me today is Scott Smith. We're here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we are talking today to Gina Rosenthal. Gina is the founder of Digital Sunshine Solutions. That's an Austin-based consultancy, and it provides content marketing services. So Gina, let's jump right in. We're all using AI tools, right? And how can we start using them in a way that is a responsible way to use them as content creators? What are some of our first steps that we need to consider?
I think first step is to consider, what are you using? Is it AI? Is it an AI tool? What actually is the platform you're using? Because that opens us up to understanding that this is a tool. It's very important to understand what it can and can't do. It's not magic. It's not a robot that can think for you. It's not a tool that can think for you. This is, especially when we're talking about some of the generative AI tools. It's basically a platform that has been taught to do something that is more human-like, which is the definition of AI. But it's not even doing a whole process of AI, it's doing a portion of it. So the generative tools, especially the ones that are around content and words, all they do is they're doing a sentence completion based on how they were trained. So I think the first thing to understand is that this is something that data scientists and linguists and people that are really smart and can understand how to write the programs to train another program to pull words out of thin air, make it seem like it's really human. And this is what they write, a program that is run on top of some computers, a whole bunch of really powerful computers. And somebody puts a chat box in the front of it to make it seem just like it's texting or chatting with another human being, when that's not what it is.
So I'm thinking about leadership within corporations coming up with guidelines for what is and is not appropriate use of these generative AI tools. Is there any kind of guidance or training for leadership on how to make that happen yet?
Now, one of the number one things that business leaders need to think about is, what have you trained this on? What's the data you've used to train it? I think if people are interested in, or they're doing the ESG programs, right? Part of that is, what is
could I interrupt there and say, what is an ESG program?
Environmental, social, and governance factors. So A lot of big companies have these initiatives to raise their ESG score so that they're more they're focused on, because a lot of the people in the public want this, they're focused on especially the environmental parts of their operations. Should we be flying everywhere in first class? What does it cost to run our data center? So if any of the companies and leaders have this ESG initiative on their roadmaps, this particular AI, ChatGPT, all the rest of them, these questions are very important. It takes a beefy computer with GPUs and DPUs and like really powerful components to be able to train the computers. And the reason is those weights and the way the algorithms are written, and that's really the way the neural networks are written. You have lots and lots of servers they say, let me see this, let me see that, let's talk to you, this is my result from that. And they're talking back and forth, and they go really, really, really fast to perform the training. And so the training is not a very environmentally friendly thing. It's just tons and tons of computers that they run.
Well, as a person who uses generative AI tools like ChatGPT, do I need to feel guilty for running anything? Am I contributing to global warming and environmental impact by asking a silly question or asking it to generate a silly image that seems so innocuous, but it actually might be harming something. And how harmful am I being by doing that?
As an individual engine, just asking the questions, not so much, but it's the training piece. So training new data sets is what causes the issue. So for example, we were talking about businesses putting their own data in there and retraining it. That would be a question to ask, like, what is the environmental impact of this? Because we have an ESG initiative and we need to account for that. We're going to have to account for that and put that in our reports. So and the other part of that, that goes very close to the environmental is the social piece. So a lot of times these big data centers are located in more poor areas, not just here, but across the globe. Are the people that are paying, are the people that are, one second, are the people that are, their water is being used for this or other things, are they obtaining the benefits that the rest of us are obtaining for it? And I think the silly questions, that's just more a marketing ploy, honestly, that OpenAI did. They made it free because they wanted to see what would happen. And they wanted to see, what are people going to use this for? And what are the biggest use cases going to be? And where can we monetize this? So, and they made it free so everybody would test it out and find bugs and find things. So that was kind of a marketing ploy. It was really clever of them to do it that way. But I think going forward, this will probably be the way a lot of the tools that we use to generate content use. So it's not so much the feeling guilty. It's more of, thinking about, if we're looking at it from a business perspective, all right, maybe in 5 years, there's going to be like 5 different players to choose from. You should be able to say, what is your carbon footprint from the training? And if there's no market for consuming those, or if the market pushes back and says, no, we need you guys to do this a better way. It can't just be throwing everything together. We need you to do this in a way that's performant and that it thinks about the power supplies that you're using and thinks about the emissions that you're using. So it's kind of more of the market being aware of how it works. That's why I keep going back to it. If we're aware of how it works and it's just a computer program, what does that mean? And what are some of the drawbacks? I think if you've got an ESG initiative, you've got to think about this from environmental, from the social. The social part of it goes even further than just, are people in areas where, because it takes a ton of water in these data centers to keep the data centers cool enough to run the algorithms long enough to train a model. So the other piece of it, we talked about the tagging. So tagging is mostly still done by hand. And I think we've talked about this on another podcast. If you ever see like bicycles, like you do a security check, are you a human? Well, tell me where all the bicycles are in this panel. You're actually training a model when you're doing that. You're doing part of the tagging and training. So, but what happens, and in particular, in ChatGPT, they hired people to do that tagging in Africa. And the people that do that tagging are they come across very similar horrible things that the people that work for the big social media companies come across, to keep them out of our sites and to keep them out of the trained model. Don't want to know about all the horrible, crazy, dark things that people put online. There's a lot. So, what is the impact to a neighborhood or a city if you've got people that are absorbing all of that horror to keep it away from everybody else that's going to use ChatGPT? And are the people that are having to endure that, are they being taken care of emotionally, and are they being compensated enough? So kind of these really off dark questions. But if you've got an ESG initiative, that social piece of it is really important. And you need to think about that and ask the providers, the people that are training these models and getting this really cool way to create content out to us, make sure they're doing it in an ethical way. That's the only way to stop it from them taking advantage of people across the globe, is for us to push back.
I do want to follow up too. You said, hey, we'll talk about this later. You said, we've got problems with using internet data for the corpus. Could you outline what some of those problems are and what leaders can do to start having an intelligent conversation about combating those problems?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things would be, especially in professional writing and especially in professional technical writing, I can attest to this personally, not a lot of women, not of diversity, that people are trying to increase that. So one of the things that can happen again, words are how we tell our stories, how we create our cultures. And if we're talking about ChatGPT and this generative chat piece of it, if you have things from around the internet that say that, for instance, there's only male and female as far as genders, that's the only thing that will come back into your writing. If you don't know any better, you're just going to take that. If you don't think about it, if you're just building something, you don't think about it, you're going to take that, you're going to put that in your writing, and then you're going to publish that and spread it. Things like that, things like doctors are only men, and or the pronouns that are used when referring to something to do with a doctor is he and him. You never see it be the other way, any other way. Okay, all doctors are men. They must be, because it's always he and him pronouns. And that's kind of how it's ended up in a lot of our own writing now. It's just kind of just how we've written, because that was a professional way to write. And we're trying to change that around and make it more inclusive. But this will take us back a few years. And it's not out of anybody doing anything intentional. It's because the model was trained on such a wide and very dominantly male, dominantly male written content, which is on the internet. And that's just how it is. It's just what happened. And the danger is sliding back to things that aren't as open. And the danger could be, somebody notices it and causes a ruckus for your company because that's what you wrote based on what you pulled out of ChatGPT, and nobody caught those little English language. And it's not just English language, it's just language particulars. And you're then, at the worst, nobody will catch it. And it just keeps getting retrained on the same. And we're not thinking about the diverse nature of our communities and our country. So
I wonder, as a writer, whether it's my responsibility to write more so that we have more female voices out there, or women's voices out there. So I'll do my part and do that. I think it's also incumbent upon me as a writer to ask in my prompt for inclusive language.
Maybe so.
Yeah, it could be.
Maybe that would help. So then the other thing, I think that's another thing for leaders too. You cannot expect your staff to just throw a prompt in and get something back without there being a review. It does not negate the room for them to go over the reviews, because this is just, and keep in mind that it is just a sentence completion algorithm. That literally, if you boil it down to its basics, and I know it does cool stuff, and it does. It is just a sentence completion algorithm. That's how it works. So this will give you good stuff back, even if it is just, it's saying everything is in one gender, if it's saying the wrong things. That's what the reviews are for. You review it, you make sure it's something you would put out in front of your customers and want them to see. I think the other piece, going back to what could go wrong, using the wild wide internet, using everything. If you do use it for, let me go back. So ChatGPT 3 does not have any attribution. There's no way to know where content came from. If you use it inside of Microsoft, inside of like being in their tools, you do have attribution, which is good. You know where it came from. But if you're using one of these tools and there's no attribution of where it pulled the information from, I work for big tech companies. I could write an article on a topic, like a common tech topic, pull it out of ChatGPT. Oh, this looks great. Let me go. But maybe like 2/3 of it was drawn off of a competitor to my client. And that competitor's like, hey, what are you doing stealing our language? I mean, like, those are the kind of things that can happen because it's just a sentence completer. If you don't know where the content came from, it could be your competitors that you're just giving them all, you're just stealing all their words, and they might not like that. Make a big fuss about it. So you have to still have your experts especially in text, do review. You have to have it's somewhat, y'all have to sign off on it and not just pull it out of ChatGPT, dress it up a little bit and send it out in the world. Have a little bit more thought to it. It's just a sentence completion algorithm, a very complex one, but that's what it does. And if you get that in your head, and that's fine, right? It's like I've used it on those common text topics, instead of Googling around for stuff, I've just used ChatGPT and I know what I'm going to say anyways. And then I scrape things and then I actually go find content that I want to link to and all the things you need to do to SEO a blog. So I've done that for a couple of blog posts. So it's not that it's a bad thing to use, but it's something you have to review and you have to think critically about. Okay, I'm not really sure where they pulled this from. Could this be from my main competitor? Think what you're doing. I think is it.
I had in a conversation with ChatGPT a few weeks ago, I picked a topic that I know something only about because my father was stationed there during World War II, and I asked it to write about Ulithi, which was a naval anchorage for a couple of years in the war. And I asked it, I prompted it so I could get more and more information of it. And then I said, okay, and I reframed the question. So it was a little easier for it to get a response. And I said, cite your sources. And it did the equivalent, I think, of doing its homework on the bus to school. And it threw up things like from Smithsonian Magazine and a few other publications, and they're all dead links.
Well, they also people have said they've made up sources, made up journals, made up reporters. They just make it up.
Well, I mean, I guess it is remotely possible that when it last built that corpus in 2021, they might have been live links. I don't know.
Or think about what it does. It's just a sentence completion. It finds the next word and that's where it goes with. So you're asking it to do something. It's like, oh, he's wanting this. So, okay, here we go. This is the next words that should be there. Doesn't know that it's giving you false information. It's working with what you're telling it and what it's been trained to do. So those are the questions you would ask is like, what has this been trained to do? Mm-hmm. What is the training model that it's been trained on? And those questions about environmental and social governance, I think those things are important to ask too.
Sure.
I think that's an excellent summary, that we do want to use this in a safe, ethical, and responsible way. So we need to look at the environment. We do need to look at the governance questions. We do need to look at the social questions of it. We do need to ask about how was this built and how can we go forward in a sustainable way. And there's a lot of things to consider. And thanks for letting us know what those things are. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think the other thing is there are very smart people, a lot of women that were fired from some of these big companies for pointing out some of these ethical problems. And so that would be another question too, like who's on your ethics team? Do you have an ethics team to help guide you when you're building, these and training these models?
I heard about AI washing, Gina. Can you expound on what AI washing is right now and why we need to be aware of that?
AI washing is just calling everything AI, whether it is or not. So these generative tools are not AI, but they are AI tools. And you put a bunch of them together, they might make an AI for you. And I think what you need to be careful is it also lends to this whole idea that especially these generative tools that we're really talking about today, like there's some mystical, amazing science fiction thing. Look, I can talk to the AI. And like Scott just had a conversation. I know he's talking to AI all day. He's having these conversations with the AI. And it gives you back things. It's like, oh, you're really on my level. I think if I explained a little better in my prompt, you're going to give it back. But no, it is just a neural network to figure out sentence completion, which is super not technical. So I don't want anyone coming for me for that. It's more than that. But it might make you too afraid to ask the questions or to think of this as what this is what is this is so important. It's not mystical. There's not only a handful of people that are doing this. Even if you have, I found it really disingenuous when the OpenAI CEO said, yes, I'm scared of what's happening, and you shouldn't want to work with me if I wasn't scared. Like setting up that he's like, I'm scared and I know what this is, and I'm going to cover it for you guys, and it's going to be fine. No, that's not what needs to happen. We need the business leaders to step up and question for all of the same things we talk about all day. We need them to question, like, what's your training model? What did you train it on? What did you train it to do? And tell me how this is going to impact my ESG score. And I think
it appears that what we need, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that we need more transparency in this process of training.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is, and OpenAI is a great example, they won't share, even with the GPT-4, which was the newer model that they trained, right? The one that they're charging really people to get to play with. They won't tell you what they trained it on or what they trained it to do. And they're saying, well, we're a private company and that is our secret sauce and we can't share that with you. And that's a problem.
I have a weird observation because I did take a prompt writing class and I was seeing all these examples of prompts. And one thing that just sparked my little head was a lot of these prompts that we were being encouraged to write had the word please in it. Like, why would I say, please write me this or please provide? Couldn't I just say provide it? Well, you want to be polite. Why do I want to be polite to a machine? I'm not really sure that please is something that I want to be adding here. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. Again, you kind of how do you say that word? Anthropomorphizes
Anthropomorphize. It's a rough word, but it basically means putting human attributes on inanimate objects. And I think I'm seeing rather a lot of that, especially in a technical class where they kept using the word please. So as a writer, when we're talking about looking for language that's appropriate or language that's inclusive, there's just something about me that rankled using the word please.
You never would any other time.
I don't want to start being all please and thank you with my generative AI tools.
Don't need to be.
Well, an easy way to say anthropomorphize is personify, I think.
Thank you. Thank you for stopping us from getting all nerdy here.
Okay.
Got nerdier.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's kind of what I saw when he was talking about his conversations with his AI. Was him in a cloak like Dr. Doom or something like that.
My conversations, I've probably been on there like about 10 times, and I don't think I've asked it ever more than 1 or 2 questions and then maybe 1 refinement. So I don't really have a lot of deep, dark secrets with the chatbot, but I guess they're probably coming like it is for all of us.
I think, Brianna was talking about it again. So my daughter, Brianna, wrote a really great article about using ChatGPT as aids for autistic folks that have, that's one of the biggest things. If you have a language disorder, sometimes you have a hard time figuring out how the language is supposed to look and what tone. So she's used it a little bit. She's the one that kind of brought out to me that it seems the way it's been trained, especially for emails and that kind of thing, is very, very formal. Even text, it has a hard time. She has a hard time texting something if it's a business thing. So she's had even texts they come back very formal, like, dear sir, like you would never use that language in a text. So it's obvious that obvious to her, and I think to me now too, that it was trained on more formal communications than it was on informal. So I think that's part of the asking, what was it trained to do? So, there's no reason to say, please, that you can't expect it any kind of way you change the prompt to give you something it wasn't trained to do, because it just, that's not in its training set. When we talk about training, we're just saying, go use all of this information over in your model over here in your data lake, use all this data lake information, and then follow this template that we gave you. We trained you to understand what this template is. So now use that and spit something out from that template. So knowing that, is important because it does take away the mysteriousness. And it's still mysterious to me. It's a lot of math, you guys. It's a lot of math that I don't understand. And I don't want to understand. I love data scientists. And so it's that balance of saying this is something really interesting and critical for us to learn how to do, for us to have, but we need to know how it works and how you made it work. And so we can work with it better.
Where else can we find you, Gina?
You can find me at Digital Sunshine Solutions with an S.com or on Mastodon at gminx@mas.to.